So today we are going to talk about the excretory system and excretion, and we'll talk mostly about the human body and our adaptations to removing waste from the body. So when we talk about humans and the excretory system, there's several important organs that are. So there are several organs of the human body that are responsible for the excretion of waste. So excretion is removing metabolic wastes. Okay, these are wastes that come about from different chemical processes in the body that produce waste products from the breakdown of proteins and other large molecules. Some of those processes produce waste products that could be toxic to the human body. And so our body has adaptations, organs, structures that help remove those waste products. So one of those is the lungs. So our lungs, I know we talked about them in the respiratory system, but they're an excretory organ as well. So our lungs function is both to take in oxygen for our circulatory system, but also to excrete carbon dioxide, to get rid of that carbon dioxide that's in our blood and reduce levels in our body. We also excrete water as we exhale, and you probably know this. You've been wearing a mask for a long time when you're outside in public, and you know that it gets moisture underneath there. It fogs up your glasses if you wear glasses, and that's because as you exhale, there's a significant amount of water vapor dissolved in that air, and that's why that mask traps that moisture in near your face. So our lungs are an excretory organ that helps us to remove that carbon dioxide. That's the main way carbon dioxide is removed in our bodies. We also have sweat glands. So in our skin, we have special glands here. You could see in the diagram. These are the sweat glands, and they're connected to our skin, to pores, with a little tube. And so our sweat glands, the main function of sweat is to regulate body temperature. We talked a lot about that when we were talking about homeostasis and regulating body temperature. And that's what sweat does. As it evaporates from our skin, helps cool us down, lowering our body temperature. But it also contains waste. Our sweat contains waste products like urea, the same waste product that's in our urine. That comes out in our sweat, and salts are in our sweat. It's not just water coming out of our body. And you probably know this if you've ever been outside for a long period of time and you're sweating a lot, playing basketball or hiking or doing whatever. After the sweat evaporates off your skin, what's left behind is sort of a white, crusty material. That's salt and urea that was excreted by your sweat glands. Then the water evaporated, but that stays, that sweat, those other materials that were dissolved in the sweat stay behind. Or if you ever had like a hat or something you wore all the time when you were outside playing baseball or exercising or doing whatever, if you look at it, it's got like a crusty white line on the inside because that's the salts that were in your sweat that are left behind. Our liver is another important organ of excretion. Okay, the liver, one of its main jobs is to break down large molecules like proteins, as well as various other toxins that might be present in our body. And so, if you remember back when we talked about proteins and carbohydrates and fats, we talked about proteins have nitrogen in them. That's one of the characteristics of a protein. And that nitrogen, when the protein is digested and broken down, that nitrogen is stripped off. And that can be a component in some of these waste products, okay, like urea or ammonia. So our liver helps to break down these amino acids that have this nitrogen atom attached to them, and it changes it into a form called urea that our body can then get rid of. Our liver also breaks down red blood cells that are sort of no longer useful anymore, and it sort of recycles some of their components. It also inactivates hormones that are present in our blood. And this is what the liver looks like. Is anybody a fan of eating liver? Calves liver? So you can eat liver as a food, obviously. It comes from cows. Anyone? Is anyone raise your hand if you've tried the liver before? Has anybody even tried it? Yeah, no? No one's ever tried liver. Does anyone have like parents or relatives that eat liver? Yeah, I've only eaten liver. I ate liver twice in my life. Before I was a vegetarian, I did eat liver twice. Once was with my grandfather, and he liked liver. And so I asked him to try it, and it tastes really bad. I like gagged after I ate it. The second time I ever tried liver was when I was about 14 or 15, and I had a job, and my job, there was an older kid I worked with, and we went to lunch at Friendly's, if you remember when Friendly's was a restaurant, and he ordered liver for lunch, and he bet me I wouldn't try it. So he paid me like $5, and I ate a piece of liver. It was gross though. So anyway, it's not really all that related to what we're talking about here, but I did eat liver twice. Try it. It's worth a try, right? If you eat meat and someone's having liver, give it a try. Maybe you'll love it. All right. Now, a main organ of the human excretory system, sometimes called the urinary system, are the kidneys. Kidneys are an organ or two organs within our body that help basically filter out from our blood things that could be toxic or harmful or dangerous. This is what a kidney looks like. I'm sure probably many of you have eaten kidney beans before. Yeah, they look just like a kidney. A kidney bean and a kidney look very, very similar. Same color, same shape. I don't know about the texture. I've never eaten kidneys. People do eat kidneys, though. You can eat kidneys. So the purpose of the kidneys is to basically take blood that's flowing through our circulatory system. All of the blood in the body will eventually go through the kidneys, where they will strip away toxins, excess glucose, salts, irons, urea. All sorts of different materials are removed from the blood and turned into urine for excretion. Okay. So you can see the kidneys here in this model are connected to arteries. We have two kidneys. They're in your lower back, sort of, on each side of your spine, in your lower back, so they're towards your back. And they are connected to our blood supply by arteries. So this blood flows through the kidneys. They filter out the blood and then send that blood back into circulation through a renal vein. And we have two of them. They both are working simultaneously, handling blood coming into them. You can actually live with a single kidney. Okay, so if you had some sort of kidney disease or some injury and you lost the function of one kidney, the remaining kidney can do enough of the filtration work to keep you perfectly healthy. So you can live with a single kidney. But you do need a kidney. Okay? And we'll talk about what happens if neither kidney is functioning in a minute. So they're about 10 centimeters across, so they're a pretty significant size organ. And they have these structures within them that are called nephrons, which basically is this long tube that loops down and around. And basically as fluid is going through this long nephron, that's where things get removed from that fluid. Okay. And eventually, from the kidneys are what produce the urine. Okay, and they're constantly producing this slow sort of drop by drop urine, which is basically just water, along with all the stuff the kidneys remove from our blood. And it drips through a tube called the ureter into the urinary bladder. A bladder is basically an organ that can hold material, that can expand. And so our kidneys are producing a constant drip of urine into our bladder. When our bladder fills up enough, okay, there are nerves that sense that, send a message to our brain and tell us, hey, you need to go find the bathroom, right? And once that happens, okay, the exit from the bladder outside of the body is called the urethra, okay? And the urethra exits, there's a muscle at the bottom of the bladder that keeps urine in the bladder, and then when a person is urinating, it relaxes, allowing that urine to leave the body. So that's the process of how our body filters out materials. If we look at urine, we could see what it's actually composed of. Almost all urine is water, right? 95% of urine is water. And then there's some other stuff as well. So urea is the biggest waste product that's found in urine, okay? It's, 2% of urine is urea. And then there's a whole bunch of other materials that are in urine, and you can see those levels. These are all things that our kidneys are removing from our blood. Okay. Our kidneys are very good at maintaining homeostasis, that our kidneys are adapted using different hormonal signals to remove the proper amount of these materials and leave enough of those materials so that we can function properly. For example, water. Water is a great example. If you go and you drink a ton of water someday, okay, your kidneys are getting feedback. This is a feedback mechanism. They're getting input that tells there's a lot of water in your blood, better take some out. And so in those situations, your kidneys will take more of the water out of your blood and put it into urine to get rid of it. And that's why if you're well hydrated, your urine is very clear or very dilute. And the opposite is true when you're dehydrated. Again, your kidneys are getting this feedback, okay? And there's hormones that control these levels. And so your kidneys keep more of that water in your blood and put less into your urine. So if you're dehydrated, your urine is very dark in color because it's very concentrated. It still has those waste products, but your kidneys are trying to conserve water and not lose it to urine. And so that process of feedback allows your kidneys to sort of regulate the level of these different materials in your body. If you are stuck in the desert with no water, your car broke down. I hope this never happens to you, but let's pretend that it does. And you're there, you're stuck, you're dying of dehydration. Should you drink your own urine? What do you think? Good idea, bad idea? Someone give me some info here. What do you think? Anybody?
I think if you really had to, you could, because it's mostly water, and wouldn't your body just filter out all of the other stuff anyway?
Okay, so Francesca is saying, look, I just told you 95% of urine is water, and you're going to be dying from a lack of water. That makes logical sense, right? Anybody want to argue the other point? No, you shouldn't drink your own urine? Mayor?
You're also getting like calcium, potassium, and like amino acids that you were gonna let out anyways back in.
Are you saying that's good or bad?
I mean, it's probably not great, but it could be good if you don't have like any food anyways.
Okay, so you guys are both kind of, I understand the logic of what you're saying. So, not that I'm a medical professional and I'm not giving you medical advice, but I would imagine, let's say if you were in your car, you had just drank a huge ton of Gatorade and your car breaks down, there's no Gatorade left, you already drank it all, now you're stuck in the desert and you have no other water, there's nobody around. Well, probably the first time you urinate, because you just drank that ton of Gatorade, your urine's probably going to have a high level of water, right? Because your body doesn't know you're stuck in the desert yet. And so probably your body's going to release a large amount of that water into your urine. Maybe you drink it. I don't know. Maybe you just pretend it's yellow Gatorade and you do drink it. And maybe your body can then assimilate some more of that water. But what's going to happen is, as time is going on, you're going to become more and more dehydrated. And Meredith's right in that what's in that urine are all these waste products that are toxic to your body. That's why you were releasing them in your urine. What happens if you put them back in your body? Well, they're going to go up to higher levels. And eventually your kidneys are no longer going to be able to filter those out. And so you're going to basically poison yourself with these toxins that were present in your urine. And so maybe, I guess, you might be able to do it once. I'm not really sure. But, interesting to think about. Or maybe not. Maybe it's just gross to think about. So there's different types of diseases that affect a person's kidneys. Usually when the kidneys are not working, it leads to a condition called uremia, which means basically that there's urine or products of urine present in your blood. And those are toxic, like we just talked about. Your kidneys are removing them because they're toxic, so if they're staying in your blood, they're going to start to basically poison you. This leads to being, lethargic or very tired, confusion, seizures, twitching, eventually comas. We need functioning kidneys, at least one, in order to stay alive. Can't live very long with zero functioning kidneys. And so why might kidneys fail? There's different reasons. Sometimes high blood pressure or low blood pressure can affect the kidneys, can actually damage the structure of those nephrons that are within them. Certain toxins like mercury or other drugs can affect the kidneys and how they function. So we need to have functioning kidneys. Now, what happens if a person's, well, we'll get that in the next slide actually. There are times when minerals that our kidneys are typically filtering out start to crystallize and form little secretions. That's what a kidney stone is. And so these minerals, as they build up, they are released, they go through the ureter, which is a tube that's relatively narrow. They may end up in the bladder. They have to pass then through the urethra. If you've ever known someone that's had kidney stones, they're extremely painful. I've never had a kidney stone, but if you know anyone that has, they can be debilitating, where a person is just in agony until the kidney stone is passed through the complete excretory system. Sometimes they try to break them up with sound waves. I don't know how successful that is. So this is what a kidney stone looks like. This is a huge kidney stone. Okay? This is not a kidney stone. This would be one that would be very painful for a person to pass through the urethra. So when the kidneys do fail and are not functioning properly, like we said, one kidney can do enough of the work to keep a person healthy. Kidneys can be transplanted from person to person as well. So if a person has some sort of kidney disease and neither of their kidneys are functioning properly, they can get a donated kidney. Sometimes they may get them from a relative. For example, if my daughter had kidney disease and needed a kidney, I could donate one of my healthy kidneys to her. We probably would be a match. So they have to be a match. They test them to make sure that they're a match. And if they are, then you could have surgery. One of my kidneys could be removed, could be put into my daughter, connected to her arteries and so forth. And I would have one kidney still, and I would be able to live just fine. And then she would have my donated kidney. She would live fine. Whenever a person is getting like an organ transplant like this, they need to be given a special type of drug called an immunosuppressant, because sometimes our body would recognize this foreign kidney as some foreign cell, and our immune system might actually attack it and destroy it. It's called organ rejection. And so typically when a person gets an organ transplant, they have to put on these drugs that lowers their immune system so that they don't reject the organ. But at the same time, because these drugs have lowered their immune system, they may be more vulnerable to disease. So a person that is on these medications need to be really careful about their exposure to disease. There's also, you can receive a donated kidney from a person that is an organ donor. An organ donor is a person that decides that when they pass away, any healthy, useful organs from their body can be given to somebody that's in need. So you can get an organ from an organ donor that has passed away. Now, there's not typically enough kidneys for all the people that need them. This is usually the case for organ donations. And so if a person has no functioning kidneys, there is basically a temporary treatment that they can receive that can allow them to stay alive until they get a functioning kidney in a transplant. And that's called dialysis. If you ever heard of kidney dialysis or dialysis treatment, what they do is a person that needs dialysis will have to go to the doctor's office, several times a week. They basically hook up their circulatory system to a machine like this, and blood flows from their body through this machine, and basically it acts as an alternative kidney. It's basically taking out many of these toxins from their blood, getting rid of them, and then putting the blood back into the person. So this big machine actually acts as an artificial kidney. It actually does not work as well as an actual kidney, but it is enough that it can keep a person alive until they can get a functioning kidney transplanted. Urinary tract infections are also something that's a common disease of the excretory system. They're actually more common in women than they are in men, and that's due to differences in anatomy. The urethra in men is longer than the urethra in females, and so females, it's easier for bacteria to make their way from the outside into the bladder or the ureter, causing an infection. So that's the reason why urinary tract infections are more common in women. The liver is another organ that can fail, because of various toxins, exposure to alcohol. Like people that are alcoholics typically will end up with serious liver disease as their alcoholism progresses. That's called cirrhosis of the liver. Hepatitis is an infectious disease that can affect the liver. And so if the liver is not able to function properly, then again, toxins in the body are going to build up, and that could lead to significant illness as well. All right, so that's